Raakel stared out the passenger window, watching the city slide past in the darkness. The kiss hung between them like a third presence in the car, undismissed, unprocessed, occupying the space where conversation should be. Her lips still felt warm. "Your vehicle was absent from the employee lot," Laura said, her voice carefully neutral. "I noted the vacancy at 0800. Raakel turned. Laura's profile was illuminated by the dashboard glow, her expression studiedly blank. "Alternator died. It's at the shop." Inefficient. The word cut clean. Raakel felt a smile tug at her mouth despite everything. "Yes, well, I don't replace things that still work." Laura's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. She accelerated through a yellow light with calculated timing. The housing approval should alleviate some financial pressure. Building A units include utilities in the base rent. So they were doing this, retreating into logistics and data points, as if Laura's mouth hadn't been on hers 15 minutes ago, as if Raakel's hand hadn't been in Laura's hair. "Thank you," Raakel said quietly, "for pushing that through. I didn't push. I corrected an administrative error based on objective criteria." "Right, objective." The silence that followed felt deliberate on Laura's part, a conversational door being closed. Raakel watched the city scroll past, closed storefronts, empty tram stops, the occasional late-night pedestrian bundled against the cold. The heating vents whispered warm air that smelled faintly of Laura's perfume. They stopped at a red light. Laura's fingers drummed once against the steering wheel, then stilled. "The physiological response to acute stress," Laura said, still facing forward, "can manifest in unexpected behavioral outputs." Laura's fingers tightened on the wheel. The light turned green. She drove. "Don't," said Raakel, "don't pathologize it." "I'm attempting to contextualize." "You're attempting to file it away under anomalous data so you don't have to feel it." The words came out sharper than Raakel intended. She saw Laura's throat work as she swallowed. When Laura spoke again, her voice was quieter. "I have a very clearly defined professional role. What I just did compromises, I know, the integrity of any decisions I make regarding your—" "I know, Laura, I get it." Raakel exhaled. "We can focus on work for now." Laura's eyes flicked toward her for a half second before returning to the road. "For now. For now." They pulled into Raakel's neighborhood. Laura navigated to the correct address without needing directions. The car idled in front of Raakel's building. Neither of them moved to unbuckle. "The alternator repair," Laura said. "What's the projected timeline?" 2 days, maybe 3. They're waiting on the part." "I can arrange transportation to the hospital tomorrow if—" "The bus is fine. The route from this address requires 2 transfers and extends your commute by 40 minutes. Raakel looked at her. Laura was still gripping the steering wheel, staring straight ahead, her profile sharp in the cold light from the street lamp. There was something almost fragile in her rigidity, as if relaxing even slightly would cause her carefully constructed defenses to collapse. "Thank you for the offer," Raakel said gently, "but I think we both need some space to think." Laura nodded once, a precise dip of her chin. Raakel reached for the door handle, then paused. "Aatos is at his grandparents' this weekend?" Laura asked. Raakel looked back at her. "Yes, Matthias's parents have him until Sunday." "He mentioned a robotics project," she said. "He told me his grandfather has a workshop he wanted to utilize." Laura's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "That's good. That he has familial connections beyond the custodial complications." She paused, her voice quieter. "You're a good mother." Raakel felt something warm expand in her chest, not just at the words, but at the way Laura said them. That's not a data-supported conclusion based on our limited interactions, Raakel said softly. I'm a good judge of patterns, Laura replied. Their eyes met. The warmth from the kiss returned, a shared gravitational pull that made the air feel suddenly thinner. Raakel wanted to lean across the console to prove that it hadn't been a stress response or a physiological anomaly. She wanted to watch Laura's precision fracture under her hands again. Instead, she opened the door. The cold rushed in like a rebuke. Good night, Laura. Good night. Raakel walked toward her building without looking back. She heard the Audi pull away only after her key was in the lock. 3 days later, morning arrived with pale winter light that did nothing to warm the frost-covered windows. Raakel sat at her kitchen table with her morning coffee, her tablet propped against a jar of raspberry jam. She'd slept poorly, the silence of the last few days doing nothing to dim the memory of Laura's mouth. If anything, the distance had only made the replay in her mind more vivid, competing for space with the logistics of the upcoming move. The apartment was quiet, though not empty. Aatos was still in his room, likely squeezing in 10 minutes of tinkering with his robot arm before he had to get ready for school. She opened her email almost idly, expecting the usual hospital bulletins and pharmaceutical updates. The notification sat at the top of her inbox with official gravity. Enforcement authority, action required. Her coffee went cold in her hand as she read. It wasn't a credit denial, it was worse, a notice of garnishment triggered by something called a dormant corporate liability in the amount of 45,000 euros. The letter explained that while her initial housing credit check had been approved, the subsequent processing of her new address had triggered a secondary database link. The link led to a personal guarantee she'd supposedly signed on a business loan, Matthias's business loan. Her ex-husband's name appeared 3 times in the document, each instance making her stomach tighten further. The loan had been current until 3 months ago. Then Matthias had stopped paying, and because her name was on the guarantee, a guarantee she had no memory of signing, the debt had defaulted to her. The final paragraph was the killing blow. Housing office key handover suspended, pending financial resolution. Raakel called the collection agency from the break room. The conversation was brief and devastating. A guarantee extension supposedly signed 14 months ago, 1 month after her divorce. When she pressed about the court summons, the agent read off the address, Matthias's house in Spain, where he'd fled after abandoning his son and his debts. He'd kept her registered there. He'd intercepted every notice. "That is fraud," she said. "You're welcome to dispute it in court," the agent replied, before the line went dead. Raakel stood by the window, her reflection ghost-like in the glass. Lawyers moved slowly, court dates months away, billable hours adding up. Without quick resolution, she'd lose the apartment. She unlocked her phone and opened the new contact she'd saved 3 nights ago. Garnishment notice received. Housing key handover suspended. You said the data was solid. The 3 dots appeared instantly. Impossible. Where are you? Break room. I am retaining a temporary workspace in the pavilion, room 304 until Friday. Come now. Laura looked up when Raakel entered room 304. Raakel slid the printed notice onto the temporary desk. You said the data was solid. It was. Laura typed furiously, protective anger radiating off her. The loan was active, performing until 3 months ago. The default judgment just hit the registry. It wasn't hidden, Raakel. It detonated. So I'm a liability. Laura stopped. Her gaze held Raakel's, fierce and possessive. "You are an anomaly, and I do not let anomalies stand." "I have rounds, I can't stay," Raakel said. Laura didn't hesitate. She reached for her phone, swiping the screen with a sharp, decisive movement. Raakel's phone buzzed in her pocket. "Finish your shift. Be at that address at 2100. We need a secure connection and better coffee." By midnight, Laura's sterile kitchen was a war room. Raakel sat at the island, surrounded by printed bank statements. She checked her phone for the third time in an hour, not for work, but for peace of mind. She had dropped Aatos at his grandfather's house on her way here. He was nothing like his son. The old man stayed to pay them in kindness, treating Aatos with a devotion that bordered on penance. "The guarantee extension," Laura said, snapping Raakel's attention back to the screen. "Signed 14 months ago. Where were you?" "Ward 4, psychiatric observation." Laura accessed the biometric logs. ID swipe at 1358. The bank notarization across town is stamped 1400. She looked up, eyes wide with the thrill of the hunt. "Physically impossible. It's aggravated identity theft. We file a criminal report now. It automatically suspends the enforcement." They worked in sync, the silence heavy with unsaid things. When they reached for the coffee pot simultaneously, their fingers brushed. Laura didn't pull away. "Your memory is a weapon. He chose the wrong person to defraud." They submitted the report at 2 a.m. Laura stood at the sink, washing her cup with unnecessary precision. "You could have finished an hour ago. You're cross-referencing data that's already solid." Laura didn't turn. "Thoroughness is required." "Is it, or are you just looking for a reason to keep me here?" Laura turned then, pupils blown wide in the dim light. "You should be going. It's late." "I don't want to go." Raakel stepped into the small remaining space between them, her hand finding the tense line of Laura's jaw. Laura's breath hitched, but she didn't retreat. "Then stop analyzing," Raakel whispered. She leaned in. This wasn't the frantic, stress-induced collision from the car 3 days ago. It was slow. A harsh vibration rattled, shattering the silence. "It's nothing," she said, her voice sounding foreign to her own ears. She tossed the phone back down. "Just a spam bot." The banality of it hung in the air, ridiculous and sobering. Laura turned back to the sink, gripping the porcelain edge. "The intrusion is timely," Laura said, her voice tight. "We are fatigued. Variables are becoming unstable." "Laura?" Raakel didn't push. The spell was broken, the walls of the war room reassembling around them. She gathered her things, her skin still tingling where Laura had touched her. She walked to the door, stopping at the threshold. "Laura?" "Yes?" "When this is over, we need to talk about the other variable." Laura looked up then. Her lips were swollen, her perfect composure gone. "That variable," Laura said quietly, "is statistically significant." "Is that a yes?" "It's not a no." 2 days later, Raakel didn't wait for the pleasantries. She walked straight to the counter of the enforcement authority and slid the police receipt across the glass. "Case 4099, she said. "Criminal report filed for aggravated forgery." The clerk typed in the number. He frowned, leaning closer to the screen. Then he stopped typing entirely. He took off his glasses and looked at her. "Madam," he said, his voice dropping an octave, "who exactly is your ex-husband?" Raakel felt a prickle of unease. Matthias Lottweiler. Why? Because your report just triggered a priority alert from the central database. The clerk turned the monitor slightly so she couldn't see the details, a protective gesture. It's not just you. The system just linked this guarantee to 3 others: Spain, Portugal, a pending case in Italy. Raakel gripped the edge of the counter, the blood drained from her face. Others? Identity theft, similar loan structures, same pattern. The clerk looked shaken himself. He didn't just default on a loan, Dr. Virtanen. He's been running a cross-border scheme for years. You're the first one to pin him down with a forensic timestamp. Raakel stood frozen. The ambient noise of the office faded. She hadn't just been unlucky. She hadn't been just a foolish divorcee. She had been targeted by a professional. She had let a monster sleep in her house near her son. Collection suspended immediately, the clerk said softly, stamping the form. He slid the confirmation toward her like it was an apology. Your housing hold is lifted. Raakel took the paper. Her hand was trembling. Thank you. She walked out into the grey afternoon, but she didn't go to her car immediately. She leaned against the rough brick wall of the building, forcing air into her lungs. The scale of it made her dizzy. She pulled out her phone. She needed an anchor. It's worse than we thought, she texted Laura. Much worse. The reply came instantly. Status. Raakel typed, her fingers stiff. Interpol alert. He did this to women in Spain and Italy too. I wasn't a wife to him. I was just another mark. For a long minute there was no reply. The 3 dots didn't appear. Raakel stared at the screen, fear spiking. Had she scared Laura off with the magnitude of the mess? Then the phone buzzed. Correction, you are the mark that ended him. Raakel let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. A tear tracked hot down her cold cheek. A second text followed. Meet at housing office, 15:30. I will handle the lease. You just breathe. Moving day arrived with brilliant sunshine that turned the snow-covered courtyards into fields of diamonds. Raakel's new apartment in Building A was on the 2nd floor, with windows facing south. Aatos was already in his new room, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes. He had just returned from his grandfather's, buzzing with energy about the soldering they'd done on his robot arm. Raakel was unpacking the kitchen when the doorbell rang. Before she could move, Aatos sprinted down the hallway. I got it! He yanked the door open. Laura! Laura stood in the hallway, not in her usual work attire, but in dark jeans and a practical jacket. She held a large, heavy box. She looked down at Aatos, her expression serious but her eyes warm. Hello, Aatos. Is the robot arm operational? Grandpa fixed the servo. Aatos beamed. He poked the heavy box. Is that for the lab? This is for the primary resident, to optimize recovery cycles. Aatos grinned. He turned to Raakel. See, Mootsie? I told you she'd bring something cool. He grabbed his jacket from the hook. I'm going to check out the playground. He slipped out the door, his footsteps echoing down the stairwell until the heavy metal door downstairs clanged shut. You two have been conspiring. We merely exchanged data regarding your sleep patterns during his last visit to the hospital, Laura said, stepping inside and heaving the box onto the couch. Raakel walked over and opened the flap. Inside was a luxurious, heavy grey textile. A weighted blanket. 15 pounds. Deep pressure stimulation reduces cortisol levels by 30% and increases serotonin. Given your recent stress markers, it is the only logical housewarming acquisition. But it's cold. Raakel stepped into the small remaining space between them. I sleep better when the weight is warm. Laura stood very still, sunlight catching the dust motes dancing between them. Raakel reached up toward Laura's face, but her hand trembled.
Raakel caught Laura's hand gently in her own, steadying it, then guided it to her cheek. This time, when they kissed, Laura closed the distance with sudden certainty. The momentum carried them backward onto the couch, half falling onto the weighted blanket with a soft laugh. Laura's weight settled against her, warm and real, and the sunlight poured through the windows.
"I want to stay,"